Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about some news that's come out recently suggesting that there's going to be a Smallville animated sequel series, which is definitely interesting news in many different regards. One of the things that came out is the fact is that a lot of the original cast is going to come back, which you immediately have to throw out there like, does that include Chloe as well? Because that could be a complicated thing. It's like, well, you could always just not include a character, but the character is very important. She's like one of Clark's best friend, and obviously they've had their complicated relationship over the course of the series. There being like, maybe there's a thing between them, maybe it's not. But also like she's married to Oliver Green Arrow in that continuity, and they have a kid together. Because another thing that has to be considered too is like, when it comes to this continuity, and that's actually a big question, is where in the continuity is it going to take place? Because if you are unaware, Smallville actually has technically an 11th season. It stopped at season 10 live action wise, but there is an 11th season in the form of a comic book which takes place 6 months after the series finale, which even that has to be broken down because basically at the end, Clark becomes Superman. He officially dons the suit and becomes Superman, flies off, saves the day. But then the very ending of the show is basically a time skip of 7 years. So the comic book takes place 6 months after his first flight as Superman. It's basically the Smallville continuity's version of Superman Year One. It's still his early days as Superman. And now I've never read the comic. I remember reading up a little bit about it years ago, but I'm not well versed in everything that went down. So I don't know what continuity, what's still continuous in that continuity. Because I have a rough idea. Like, I mean, it's been a couple years, but I know at least like the whole Oliver and Chloe thing is one thing I definitely remember from like the 7-year time skip, but beyond that, like I don't remember where everyone ends up, because a lot of those stories you'd have to read the comic book to get an answer to that. But it's just something I thought was kind of interesting. Like if they decided to do a sequel series, where would it take place? Would it take place like at, you know, would it be an adaptation of that 11th season, or would it be its own story taking place wherever the comic book left off? Because I don't know, maybe that comic book doesn't cover that entire 7 years, and this story takes place in between there, so it's kind of adding more. Because once again, that's like 7-year period. You can kind of do whatever you want to, or you could do it like after that 7-year period, because there hasn't really been too much that touches on the continuity post that's very ending of him being Superman for 7 years. But then I was reading an article that made me reminded me, right, we're also living in a world post Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, which because of that, we do know that the Smallville TV show took place in the Arrowverse multiverse. I always forget what Earth it was. Is like 257 or maybe 267. I don't remember. I'll include an annotation to correct myself. But in that continuity, Clark gave up his powers and he's just a regular dude. So would we pick up there? Would it be a situation where Clark would be in the process of getting his powers back because the world needs Superman again? Or would it be before he gave up his powers? Would it eventually lead into Clark eventually giving up his powers? Because we also know in that continuity, him and Lois have 2 daughters, which is interesting because obviously on the current continuity of Superman and Lois, they have 2 sons. So it's interesting how that all kind of balances out, because they only had 1 son pre-crisis. Now they have 2. They have twins post-crisis. I don't know if their daughters were twins or not, or whether it's just at different ages. I would assume twins just because Jordan and Jonathan are twins, those being their sons on Superman and Lois, so maybe the same thing kind of applied there. I mean, like, timelines and stuff like that changing affects like the kids you have and stuff like that. We're kind of tiptoeing that direction with Barry and Iris, and we already went down that route because of Flashpoint with Diggle and Lila, you know, so that's a whole thing within itself. But then I also have to think about, right, if we are including Crisis, you also have to forget that that was pre-new multiverse, because that was the old multiverse when everything collapsed. And now, obviously, we haven't really gotten to it, but obviously the multiverse built back out. So who's to say the continuity in Smallville on that Earth is the same? Because continuity for Lois and Clark changed. I mean, although a lot of the CW shows now take place on the same Earth, like Flash, Supergirl, which you know, all that, like, because Supergirl used to be on Earth 38, and now it's like, nope, that's on Earth 1, with all the other stuff like Legends, Batwoman, Arrow, Black Lightning used to take place on a different Earth, and now it's on part of this. It's a conversation. So for all we know, this gives them free reign to be like, okay, even if we could go past the 7 years and still not be adherent to where we ended up in Crisis on Infinite Earths, because technically that continuity doesn't exist anymore. Not unless you want to do, hey, this was post Crisis on Infinite Earths content, and then play into it and just like, oh, this is post Crisis, so everything's changed. Like, you could play into that. So there's many different directions they could go. Just a lot of that's interesting stuff. I even should have started all this or being like, this is very unofficial, because this all came from like Tom Welling. From what I was reading, it came from a cameo that was put on Twitter, and then beyond that, there hasn't really been much. I think he's given some insight into it, but other than saying like, some of the cast is coming back, including Michael Rosenbaum as Lex. Like, beyond that, we haven't heard too much. To be fair, it is June 26th at the time of recording this. This probably won't go up until next Friday just because of scheduling of videos. And so because of that, there could be more stuff that comes out. I'll probably make a separate video, or maybe just scrap this video entirely and just do it all over again. So if you're seeing this video, maybe news hasn't changed too much. But like I said, it's unofficial. But even if it isn't official or not, it's still something interesting to think about, you know. So that's, you know, that's my thought about it. I'd love to get to know yours in the comments down below. What would you think about, what are your thoughts about this Smallville animated sequel series? Are you someone who read the comic book that was season 11 of Smallville? So would you want them to adapt that? Would you want it to be its own thing? Would you be like, you know, adhere to the continuity where it currently is? Or are you like, nah, screw it, ignore the continuity, just do whatever you want to? Like I said, we are post-Crisis and everything, so they technically could in certain regards. I mean, for all we know, technically anything that happened in the comic books could be thrown out as well. That's once again, it's a very long and interesting conversation to have about what potentially changed on that Earth, new timelines and everything. So, like I said, I'd love to get to know your thoughts about all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.